Oh, come on.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, Kevin.
Bob. Good morning, Bob. How you doing?
I have a headache, but I'm drinking
Sorry.
coffee, so I'll be good to go in about 2 seconds.
Okay. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ron, was that you? I think your sound's a little garbled.
Oh, is that a sound check to me?
Yeah, okay, you're good. I just
Okay.
heard, I heard someone talking, but we couldn't clearly hear them.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair Osama. Looks like we're just waiting on one more committee member, but it's 9 o'clock, so we can start when you're ready, when the committee's ready.
All right, let's give it just 30 seconds.
Excellent.
All right, let's see. Okay, 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. We reconvening our meeting from yesterday or last evening. I want to start by asking the BSC if there's anything they'd like to go over before we start.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is Kevin Day, Deputy Executive Director with Building Standards Commission. And I do need to call the roll and then read the telephone and Zoom instructions before we resume, if that's okay.
Please do.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and call the roll first. Osama Yunin,
Present.
Dave Walls. Thought I saw him on earlier. I'll come back.
Yeah, he is. He's there.
Oh, great. Bob Raymer,
Yes.
Sharon Revum,
Here.
Michael Stone,
Here.
Wes Sullins,
Here.
Harry Ibala,
Here.
Stephen Taylor,
Here.
Ron Takaguchi,
Present.
Dana Papke Waters,
Here.
Ellen Owens. Okay, and we have a quorum. All voting members are present. Thank you. And so now I'd like to just reread the telephone and Zoom instructions. Good morning, everyone. This meeting is being held remotely, consistent with Senate Bill 189, which authorizes a state body to hold public meetings through teleconferencing and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically. Today's meeting can be viewed in the Zoom webinar and on the CBSC YouTube channel linked on the meeting agenda. I would like to remind the YouTube viewers there is an approximate 45-second delay. Real-time closed captioning is available via automated live transcriptions in both Zoom and YouTube. And I'll take a quick moment to interject with regard to the YouTube webcast viewers, to the participants. If your camera is not on, the YouTube webcast won't show who's presenting, so they'll just kind of hear a voice. So if you want to be seen so that folks can better know who's commenting, just something to keep in mind. The public may provide comments on each agenda item by calling in on the Zoom teleconference line provided on the meeting agenda or by using the raised hand feature in Zoom. Instructions are provided on the CBSC webpage. If you have difficulty with the technology, please call the CBSC main line at area code 916-263-0916. I will now read the public comment and Zoom instructions. If you wish to make a comment on a specific agenda item, please listen for the committee chair to ask for any comments from the public. The chair will first go through the Zoom participants that have raised their hands. Then the committee chair will take comments from the public that are on the Zoom phone line. At this time, please take yourself off of mute. You may choose to announce your name and who you are representing before making your comment. Please mute yourself when done commenting. The chair will continue through the call queue until there are no questions remaining. Staff will summarize any written comments that were received by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. The committee will then proceed to the next agenda item. If possible, please call from a landline using the telephone handset only. This enhances the committee's ability to hear your comments clearly. Calling from a speakerphone or a cell phone reduces the quality of the audio and makes it much harder for your comments to be heard clearly. Thank you. That's all the housekeeping I have, Chairperson.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's commence where we left off yesterday. And yesterday we left off at the public comments for items 13 and item 14, tier 1. We have not yet discussed tier 2. It's just tier 1. So if we could get the next caller, and I would like to remind all the callers, you have a 2-minute time limit and we'll give you a 10-second reminder. So if we can get the next caller to comment, please.
Stacy Renexus.
Good morning. Stacy Renaxis, Power Tree Services. Commented a couple times before. I wanted to follow up on a comment that someone from Tesla made yesterday in regards to this item, where they were encouraging language to allow for proprietary format chargers. Although Tesla has a very significant, if not dominant, position in the market, I think that that would be a terrible idea. J1772 is the only universally compatible standard, and Tesla itself is compatible with that. So I wanted to make that point. The other comment I'd like to make is there was quite a spirited discussion about some of the multifamily access issues involving lifts and some of the other kinds of parking control elements yesterday, as I'm sure everyone remembers. The comment I would make is that shared access of a chargers at higher rates of charge, say 50 amps or up to the full J1772 standard of 70 amps or 19.2 kilowatts, would resolve many of those access issues and fairness issues, especially if they were required to have an access control mechanism that alerted people as to the readiness of a vehicle to be moved. This is used successfully in many locations already, so the technology exists from a variety of vendors, and it's both more infrastructure efficient, cost efficient, and thereby reduces the cost of energy, which was another issue raised yesterday about the pricing that people are charging. And I wanted to share our own experience from San Francisco project, where we installed in 68 multifamily buildings with EV chargers. We were charged at that time $166,000 per building for interconnection by PG&E. That worked out to almost $3,600 per kilowatt of capacity that we were charged. So reducing that power level is critical to cost effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
James Fry.
Morning, everyone. It's James Fry from 2050 Partners, representing the IOUs from California Codes and Standards Organization. Going to be a bit of a repetitive commenter again as well, but my first comment had to do with helping separate the term ALMS from charging service providers when it comes to costs and the threat of higher costs. The ALMS system is hardware and may or may not have a cost associated with it. So as we progress on providing value to the buildings and value to the grid related to managed charging, we need to separate the problem of charging and for energy fairness versus the hardware itself. So please try to separate ALMS from charging service provider fees. I have a question related to the code. If someone wanted to substitute a low power level 2 EVSE for any required low power receptacles, would they be allowed to? And is that something that needs to be clarified in the code, or is that assumed about code as a minimum? Would you mind answering that question?
Are you done with the public comments?
Oh yeah, my last one is we recommend that ALMS be explicitly allowed on all EV spaces. So if Calgreen requires 10 spaces and then the customer adds another 10, we recommend that ALMS be available to be used on all 20. Unlike the rules at the moment for HCD where it's only on the extra 10. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I have Bob Raymer's hands up.
Yeah, to the last speaker, and I also have a question for Stacy when we're all done. This is in the appendix. So the local jurisdiction has a great authority to adopt portions, all of it, tweaking things, etc. And they do. They've been doing that for quite a while. For the longest time, they were only adopting the tier 1 or tier 2 energy portions. Now, many jurisdictions are adopting more than that, but you can pick and choose out of the appendix. The whole idea of the appendix is so that the locals don't have to reinvent the wheel per se, but there's a lot of modification that goes on at the local level. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you. Okay, next caller.
Linda Hutchins Knowles.
Hi, thank you. Actually, could you come back to me? I had something come up and I'll be ready to talk a few minutes from now. Could you call the next caller and come back to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Next caller, please.
Sven Thiessen.
Morning, all. Thank you for doing the work you do. This is Sven Thiessen, representing ratepayers, representing taxpayers, representing my children, your children, and looking at this in multifamily unit dwelling, people that live in apartments and condos, because it doesn't seem that anyone else is doing that. And I would cordially ask that one of the members of the CAC make a motion to replicate this optional code, option B, in the mandatory section as an option. Because this way, all the cities that are implementing REACH codes won't have to implement a reasonable REACH code. They won't have to get emails from Emily, just like I got from a colleague last night, talking about San Jose's REACH code, how it doesn't, because it doesn't exactly meet the requirement of the mandatory, even though they're going, some would argue, well, it's clearly going above and beyond giving access to power to all the residents, that we don't have to go through these negotiations every time. For each city, it's costly, it's time consuming, and we have much more important things to do. We need to grant access. And again, we heard yesterday from Mr. Baker that this is hard for HCD to do. I talked to my partners in my consulting firm. We are willing to work pro bono for the next month to get into the 45-day comment period language. We have a couple hundred years of EV driving experience. We've costed out systems, we've installed systems. So we're willing to work pro bono with HCD to enable this to happen, because we recognize the cost savings on the other side of the coin, the avoided installations, the avoided hassle that every individual has to go through to get their condo. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Linda Hutchins Knowles.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I represent Actera and the EV Charging for All Coalition. And I'm asking the Code Advisory Committee to please do your job. HCD is responsible for their job, and they will decide whether they accept your recommendations or not. But you are tasked to look at the 9-point criteria and determine if this code satisfies them all. And I submit to you that we have just demonstrated that it does not. And so even if HCD tells you, oh, we don't have time between now and when the 45 comment period comes out, it's too much of an administrative burden, that is on them. That is not on you. You are the Code Advisory Committee. And one of you at least abstained yesterday or voted against a motion because you said, I really hoped we could do an alternative compliance pathway. And I suspect that many of you feel the same way and somehow feel constrained by this process. Well, someone can make a motion and say, this item 14, let's duplicate it in the mandatory section as an alternative and option. And someone can second that. And if the majority of you vote on it, it will go into the record as your recommendation. And then it'll be up to HCD whether they listen or not. But if you do not do that, then HCD is not even being asked to consider this. 2 years ago, you recommended they consider it and they did not. That doesn't mean you should not recommend it again. That means the process needs to be changed so there's more time if they need more help. We will help. We actually submitted in our Appendix B the exact code language that you could use to be trying to make this easy. We're trying to take away any reason for you not to do this because you're not forcing builders to do anything. You are making it easier for everybody. Yes, I'll finish my 10 seconds. You're making it easier. So please look at every one of the 9-point criteria and say whether this is fair, reasonable, and meets with consistently with environmental, public health, and accessibility statutes. It does not meet criteria 3, 4, and 5. Thank you for doing your job.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Brigitte,
Yes, hi, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay. Thank you for having me this morning. I wanted
You
to.
could speak just a little bit
Yes, can you hear me
louder.
better now?
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Brigitte Racine. I'm a multifamily housing resident. I'm also here on behalf of the EV Charging for All Coalition, along with Sven and Linda. Wanted to second the talking points that they made. And I wanted to kind of illustrate what they were talking about on a higher level, what that means for me as a resident who lives in multifamily housing in terms of numbers. There are 3 cases that I can see for me living in a multifamily housing. One is if I live in this particular apartment here in Sunnyvale and there is no charging availability for my EV, then I will be basically forced to go and find a public charger somewhere, whether that's a Tesla supercharger or a charge point, any of those. And we've done the numbers. And if I were the kind of person who owns, let's say, a Chevy Bolt, let's use that, I would pay $1,350 annually for charging my car, and then about $450 for maintenance. That equals about $1,000 less than paying for fuel and maintenance on an ICE car. So that's great. But if now we say, all right, for convenience and cost, what's the difference to a resident who has EV charging at their complex, but not directly wired to the meter? So no access to the time of use rates. And it also means that a third-party vendor would charge me whatever they wanted to charge. Again, we did the numbers. I would be paying $1,900 annually for charging at my community because I would be paying a monthly service fee, a power fee, and of course, still the same for maintenance. So my ideal situation is a situation where I have dedicated EV charging in my space that is directly wired to my meter. And the direct billing goes to me. It's not done by a third-party vendor.
10 seconds.
In this case, I would pay $750 annually for charging, which is $600 less than I would pay in the first instance and $1,150 less
Time.
than I would pay in the second instance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
John Hyam.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I just want to echo the sentiments that both Bridget and Linda spoke to just a few moments ago. I did speak to you on Wednesday. I would like to just give a little more color to my message. I'm a private citizen. I represent myself. I'm just a taxpayer in California. But I'm also a semi-retired private investor. And the example that I gave on Wednesday was the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, and liken that to EV chargers. And when to install them. The best time to do it is when we do the construction, and the best time to start that process is now. So as an investor, I just want to share with you what it's like to try to retrofit current construction to support EV charger. In my experience, it's on the order of about $30,000 per charger that you install if the construction's already in. And homeowners associations and apartment buildings, even though they are open to the idea of installing chargers, they still look at it as an ROI. And people are just not very enthusiastic about paying $30,000 for to have a charger installed in their private parking space. Now, as I think it was Bridget who's just speaking, she gave the example of how much more expensive it is to charge in the public using the public infrastructure. I want to just reinforce that. by saying that the two biggest advantages to driving electric, besides the environment, are that you wake up every morning to a full tank, and it's so much less expensive. And the only way to accomplish that is by having a charger that you control where you sleep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
There are no other hands raised.
Any phone callers?
There are no phone calls today. We have another hand that went up, a couple other hands that have gone up. Dwight McCurdy,
I have a committee member, two of them hands, so
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I thought all the callers were done. I was gonna see if I could talk with Stacy from Power Tree. I wanted to drill in a little bit more in his testimony, but I'll hold off until the public testimony is done. Thanks.
I'd also like to wait till the public testimony is done.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, so let's get the next caller, please.
Dwight McCurdy.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You
Okay.
have two hands raised.
Yeah, that was by accident. Yeah, sorry.
All right.
I have 4 questions that I would like to pose to the members of the CAC and HCD and BSC regarding the inequity of EV charging prices for residents of multifamily homes. And then I have one set of comments if I have time. The first question is it fair for residents of single-family homes to charge their EV on a rate and tariff that is regulated by a regulatory body, and for residents of a multifamily home to pay for unregulated electricity prices to charge their EV at their multifamily home? Second question, is it fair for residents of multifamily homes to pay 2 or 3 to 5 times more for EV charging than residents of single-family homes? Third question. We are now in the 4th code cycle where HCD is considered EV charging for residents of multifamily homes. Would it be timely to study how prior adopted codes, 3%, 6%, 10%, have impacted the price paid by residents of multifamily homes for EV charging, whether at home, at work, or at DC fast charging stations? Next question. Would it be timely for such a study to be completed prior to the next triennial code cycle and shared with all stakeholders so we can all learn from past practices as we all embark on another code cycle? Those are my questions. Can we learn from what we've already done? And I do have one comment about the mutual culpability of the agencies. The CPUC passes a regulation for resale of, okay, I'll offer my comment later. Thank you.
Next caller, please.
Michelle Pierce.
Hi, I'm Michelle Pierce and I live in Southern California. I live in a senior apartment complex, 55 and over. And we have a broken level 2 charger. That's the reason I moved in here, is because they advertise they have electric vehicle charging, and the charger basically has never worked. The apartment complex refuses to fix it. And I rely on DC fast charging to get around. And the prices vary. And when I try and convince people to, oh, driving electric is great, the comment is, I live in an apartment. I'm not going to get a car if I can't charge at home. Charging at home is the key to the success of the 2035 rule or law, whatever it is. In 2035, we won't be able to buy a new gas-powered vehicle in California. I don't know if you guys are just making sure that it's a not success by being the way you are, but it is the key And it's such a small amount of buildings because they don't build, compared to existing stock of apartments, they don't build that much new apartments. What? I don't understand. I really, really don't understand why you can't see the urgency of what we are saying we need to start now. Like I said yesterday, by the time these apartments are built, it's going to be close to 2030. How can you just keep not listening? We are the ones driving EVs. I bet you none of you actually has to live in an apartment and rely on driving and drive a pure battery electric.
Time.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Beverly DeShaw.
Good morning. I'm just now tuning in, so I have no idea where the conversation has been, but I woke up this morning with thinking that I must say this to you, and that is that the larger context, of course, which I think we're all trying to address, is that we are in code red of the climate emergency. And I want to bring you some notes from the field. And that is, I talk to people all the time. I've been talking to people since, for the past 16 years. I've advised people and people have told me they're throwing extension cords out the window. My first EV was a neighborhood electric vehicle. I sent the cord into my kitchen and plugged it in. And that's what people are doing. And if I have to move and there isn't charging, that's what I'm going to do. And I've recently seen something posted online from somebody back east where they ran some kind of pipe or something along the side of their house with cords in it to run it across the street, across the sidewalk at night to plug in. So if you're concerned about safety, yeah, we're going ahead. It's the geeks in Silicon Valley who started converting gas vehicles to electric, and they're still doing stuff, and we're still doing stuff. People are already setting up V to H to their house so they can run it when the grid goes down. Just by rigging stuff up in their garage. If you're not passing it in the codes, we're doing it anyway. So if you're concerned about safety, then you need to make these receptacles available for people to use so that they can charge their cars that we need to be transitioning to, because on the central coast, 70% of our emissions are from vehicles. 5 counties and the central coast and some of the north counties from San Francisco have 70% of our emissions from vehicles. We need to be able to transition to electric vehicles and have our grid be greening up so that we can plug into green energy so that we can save our planet. And people who cannot afford to live in a single family home
Beverly, please
need
wrap
to
up
be able
your.
to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter, please.
All right, we do have somebody who came in on the phone. So I'm going to explain how the phone calls work. I have to unmute you and then I cannot mute you again. You have to unmute and mute yourself. If you have a comment when we call for a comment from the phone, please just unmute yourself and speak up. I am unmuting you now. If you have a comment, please go ahead.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Try to find the unmute button.
You're good. We can hear you.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you. What I was thinking is that we've asked for a change to allow 100% of the possible receptacles in a multifamily building to address this. And we need this, even though not everybody has EVs to begin with, it paves the way so that people that are less fortunate and end up, as many of them living in multifamily housing, have an opportunity to be able to take to use an electric car. I'm just wondering whether, there's been the concern I heard yesterday in the meetings was this is too difficult to do. We have to wait. I'm wondering whether there's some ingenious solution that can come up and can help do something to address, how to manage this. Is there some reference or something we can put to the appendix at the back? We need to get this now, and we need to become ingenious to figure out how to do it. It doesn't sound like it should be impossible, but we do need that help. And the concern is it's going to be a long time before all this gets done. So we need to keep moving forward, and we need to encourage people so that, when they're starting to look at buying a new car and they live in a new multifamily building, they'll have a way to look at that. The other part is that we need to do this now in order to start thinking about how we do it for existing buildings. The sooner we get more of that traction out there, the more likely it is that the existing buildings, where most of them are, will have a way to be able to address that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
The next caller is somebody who's already spoken. Dwight McCurdy.
Do we have another caller?
There are no others in the queue, sir.
And Dwight, I just want to let you know, we will have another public comment still for item 14, so you'll get a chance to speak again. Okay.
I'm happy to speak either now or later.
Let's do later, just to be fair to others.
Sure.
Thank you. Do we have any written comments that we need to summarize?
Those have already been summarized, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, let's go back to committee members, starting with Sharon.
Okay, I would just like to state that this group, and especially myself, we understand that this is a climate emergency and that we do need to prepare for 2035. I'm torn because I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And by that, I mean the fact that we have all of these measures being considered for Cal Green right now on carbon and on electrical vehicle charging and so forth is actually, I know it doesn't seem like that to the people on the phone, but the fact that it came along as fast as it did is pretty amazing in terms of code cycles. I also want to state that while I understand that the fees are a terrible thing, the way they're happening, this is not the place to control fees. We have no power to do that. The code is not the place to do that. I encourage you to talk to your legislators and to find out who else can help you with that. It's a very important topic, but it's not a code topic. I do want to state also that I absolutely believe that this is an equity question. The idea of access to everyone is very important. And I think that we can support having the alternate in the mandatory measure. And I want to propose that we include the alternate in the mandatory as an option, not as a requirement. It's an option. You can choose one or the other. And that's where I stand.
Thank you. Bob Bramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a response to Dwight, and when I'm done with that, I'd like to drill into some of the stuff that Stacy from Power Tree was talking about. First, with Dwight, on your first question, it's not fair. As we started this out back in 2014 and 15, when we developed the first set of regs, I brought up the fact, similar to the water submeters, that a lot of time and effort is going to have to be spent to make sure that the apartment house residents aren't basically put between a rock and a hard place when massive application takes effect, and we're kind of on that precipice right now. Okay, as a suggestion, I'm quite familiar with both the legislative process and the administrative process, and the PUC, unfortunately, is sort of a black hole of bureaucracy. And what I would strongly urge you to do, just like Sharon just mentioned, the best way to get this done quickly is to get an author from the legislature, hopefully one from each party, to show that there's a coalition effort on this, and basically have the legislation direct the Public Utilities Commission to go forth and establish an equitable fee structure, rate structure, and this is probably the most important part, to have that work done within a set period of time. I'm familiar with certain PUC proceedings that have lasted 9 years, and you need this done quickly. And so once the legislation will take a year to get done, you'll probably, since there's a 2/3 majority for Democrats in the legislature, this would stand a good chance of getting through. But you need to get this done so that the PUC doesn't, kind of scratch their head and work on this for years. So that's my advice to Dwight. And Mr. Chair, with your permission, could you open up the line to Stacy of Power Tree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Stacy, are you there?
I am.
Hey, great. On the PG&E issue, could you just very quickly go over those figures again?
Sure.
I've got some questions for you.
Sure. We had a project where we had contracted with a large property owner in the city of San Francisco and in some adjacent locations in South San Francisco and the North Bay. We were installing a combination of solar energy storage that would be delivered to the tenants to help reduce their electric bills. And we, at the same time, were installing electric vehicle chargers into all of the buildings on a shared basis so as to enable not just the tenants of the building, but the neighbors of the building, because zoning tends to concentrate apartment buildings together. So the idea was to get as much access as possible, and the property host was willing to place these chargers in such a way as to allow everyone in. PG&E delayed the project for years for various reasons, which are, I'm sure if anybody's had any contracting experience can name a few. But the end result at the end of the day was that they came back with an average bill to install a 200 amp, 240 volt service dedicated to the EV chargers of $166,000 per building. That was their fee, not including the internal switchgear, not including our work, not including the chargers. Right, and that I've got that documented.
Okay, so that's good to hear. I mean, it's horrible to hear, but
yes, it was horrible.
Yeah, in the 1990s, we basically went to the PUC. We were having trouble getting PG&E to provide us with building substantiation. They'd have a couple of line items, and then they'd have miscellaneous, and that was a giant figure. Ultimately, the PUC directed them to provide you with a very specific kind of printout. They can still have miscellaneous, but it can't be the leading figure. And so I'd be very interested to know if PG&E, was just basically saying, hey, if you want us to hook it up, you're going to have to pay this. Did they provide you with a breakdown of what in the world they were charging $166,000 a unit for?
It was very vague, and we wound up actually filing a formal complaint and suing them at the PUC.
Okay.
It took several years to get through that suit, and unfortunately, that was at the end of it. They dropped the fees, went down to $6,000 per building from 166.
Mm-hmm.
But our funding and the funding window had collapsed by that time for that project. So that one project would have enabled 12% of all San Franciscans to have had high power level 2 charging within one block of their home. And PG&E, just completely killed it. And we have since learned from that experience and moved on in our EV systems to absolutely mitigate the amount of power required from a utility so that no utility upgrades are required, yet the capacity for delivery can be maintained through a combination of battery, local energy generation, and a minimal amount of whatever existing capacity may be present at the building.
Okay, well, thank you, Stacy. And for the members of the committee and especially for the state agency representatives, Dana in particular, you've got the Energy Commission and ARB who are pushing strongly for all electric construction in both new and existing buildings. And once again, you've got ARB, BSC, and HCD pushing for EV charging. We're going to basically be ramping up electric use in California, obviously. And when you've got the biggest utility in the US that operates like this, what's going to happen when we start doing major renovations, electric ready and all electric in existing construction and built out parts of the urban setting that PG&E controls? You can't have things like this happen. There needs to be some level of order. The job needs to get done. And I realize PG&E is head over heels focusing on wildfire preparation, upgrading the grid and fire hardening it. But, if we're going to meet these climate goals, everybody needs to be involved, including the utility. And right now that's a problem, and I don't know how to solve it quickly, but it needs to get solved. So I'm sorry for ranting, but that's my thought. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Wes? Oh, I'm sorry, Wes. I got Director Mervelli.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to caution the discussion a little bit and keep to the rulemaking. I think obviously this is very valuable information and incredibly helpful for all the state agencies. But I just want to caution that we don't want to begin a dialogue that might want to happen at a workshop and would be useful at a future rulemaking cycle. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. Wes?
Well, thanks for that. In terms of rulemaking, so I just want to step back for a second. The way I'm seeing what's being proposed is essentially for multifamily parking, 40% of the total number of parking spaces have to have EV receptacles, charging receptacles, right? And then 10% need to be actually powered. And I think what the proponents, some of the letters and some of the comments we've heard, they're asking for more like 100% potential. Like if a builder or the city would like to, they can require 100% of the spaces, or at least one per dwelling unit owner or resident are able to have a charger. And I guess the question I have is there anything in the current language in the mandatory section that limits somebody from going above it? I do see the words like need not exceed 40%. And maybe I'm guessing that no, there's nothing that says you can't go further, because that's typically what we hear is you can always exceed the code. But in the option B, tier 1 or 2, are there trade-offs that are allowed there that would not be allowed unless they're put into the mandatory section of the code? And maybe that's a question for HCD or the other committee members. Is there a trade-off that wouldn't be allowed if we kept this as a tier and a jurisdiction did not adopt the tier? Because unless someone adopts the tier, they cannot enforce it. A builder cannot say, we build to this tier. It has to be the jurisdiction that's enforcing and inspecting. So I just want to make sure that if there's anything that's limiting someone from going above in the way that's written in option B. So I'm not sure who can answer that. Maybe Emily.
Emily, yeah. Is Emily?
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that. Looking at the construction of the mandatory measures, we do have the requirement for the chargers in there at a certain percentage. So if the receptacle's at 40%, there's nothing that prevents, a designer from going to 60% or 80%, as long as they have that mixture of the minimum amount of EV charging receptacles and the EV chargers. So yeah, and as somebody mentioned, I think it may have been Bob Raymond, when you get into the appendices, and the tiers, it's kind of a free for all. It has to be above, of course, the mandatory, because that's the whole scoping nature of the tiers. But they can configure this any way they want. I mean, we want a mixture of the chargers in there for sure. Which is why we have in the options the charger requirements, because we still feel that there is place and a time for those level 2 chargers at the, 40 amps.
Thank you for that. And then Bob, maybe as a builder, and maybe Ron will say to this too, is there anything that in there that tells a builder they can't do what's in option B of the tier?
Well, as Emily said, as long as you've got that somewhat mix that the new mandatory measures require, the EVSC plus the, the plugs, heck yeah. A builder can do that. And more importantly, we haven't gotten into this, but the Energy Commission and the governor's budget originally had a whole lot of incentive funding for both existing and new construction. We're now in a bit of a deficit with the budget. And so quite frankly, I'm not sure where the new construction still lies in the revised budget. You'd have to get a hold of Commissioner McAllister or Chairman Hasho over at the Energy Commission to find out. But yes, the builder can obviously go beyond that. And I have to say that, with some of the more upscale projects, heck yeah, they're probably going to be doing this type of activity as a marketing feature. But yeah, the short answer is yes, they can do that.
Thanks for that. And I'll just say one last thing, a comment that, we talk a lot about the cost of EVs and getting new ones and the adoption rates, but also I want to mention, especially for apartments and condos, there's a big used EV market as well. And the savings there are from maintenance, not just the cost of electricity. I've got a Nissan Leaf, and other than a pop tire and some brake fluid, really there's not much you need to do to the car. And so there are kinds, in terms of equity, there's a lot of benefits to the maintenance as well. And I think that's a factor for, again, why it's important to get as many EVs in place as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Ron Takaguchi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment a bit on the discussion that was open. In the voluntary tiers, I do see language that is prescriptive. So certainly a builder, a designer could opt to do design either with the tier or even above that. But if it's not in the mandatory measures as an option, then of course they could opt to not do some of the prescriptive items here. For example, they don't have to have the J1772 connectors. They don't have to have the receptacles to the assigned parking. So the prescriptive language does have some weight to it, as all code language does. So I'll leave it at that, and perhaps for further discussion on moving that as an alternate to the mandatory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mitch, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. To Ron's comments, within the mandatory measures, the connectors, the J1722 are within the mandatory measures, and the other prescriptions that you identified are also within the mandatory measures. So those are already allowed. And kind of to Wes's question earlier, there's not much that is lost because you can exceed the code. And in this case, to your comments, those requirements are in the mandatory measures. Just the percentages are higher. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, this isn't quite related to what Mitch and Ron were talking about, but I know there's some talk about possible changes in the code proposals, but and Kevin Day can add to that too. As mentioned previously, we have a very short time frame to revise our proposals and resubmit them to the Building Standards Commission. And we also have internal approvals that need to go through HCD before we make the formal submittal for the 45-day comment period. So I'm told at the State Housing Law Program level, which is where I'm at, that deadline is February 17th. So it's really tight deadline.
Okay. Mitch Baker, your hand is up. Did you want to follow up? Oh, no. Okay. Kerry Ivala?
Yeah, I just, because I know that there's a little bit of talk about, yeah, it's the minimum, but they could go over it. And kind of like Rob had said at one point that, yeah, maybe for like some high scale or luxury projects that they might they might want to go over to market it as like a feature of living there. But, as someone who does look at, as new constructions coming in for new projects that are not at that level, that not their high scale, more affordable projects, I don't think we should make any assumption that they're going to go beyond the minimum, because they rarely do. It's often more they go under the minimum and try and make an argument that they don't have to for whatever reason. Going into plan review, reminding them of the minimum standard. So I don't think we should, rely on the idea that they could go over, especially when conversation has already come up about equity. So.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands from the committee. Oh, Carrie, your hand is up. Did you want to continue?
My bad. Sorry, bringing it down.
Oh, okay. Okay, Wes.
Well, that's a really good point, Carrie. And, maybe it's a small change, but in section, what is this? 4106.4.2.2.
What page number, Wes? What page number?
On B, page 5. So under the multifamily parking facilities, it says EV charging required in this section shall be located in at least one assigned parking space. That's an at least. And then the next sentence, where assigned parking is provided, but need not exceed. And I wonder if the need not exceed should just say not less than 40.
I did call the other company. I guess we'll just go to Toyota. And
Will the
basically, they said
caller
it
on
was.
the phone please mute yourself?
So anyway, a wording change.
Okay, Wes, just for all of us to follow where you are, it's on page 5.
Yep.
And what section on page 5?
It's EV ready parking spaces with receptacles, subsection B, multifamily.
So that's 5-3.
5-3, thank you.
Okay.
But it just says need not exceed. I wonder why we couldn't use language like at least 40%. A small comment, but maybe that makes a difference.
And I think Nolani from Tesla made that same comment yesterday, and I believe that's how we send it back. Let me verify. 5-3.
To the chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, it was a minimum was recommended.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Okay. Any other comments by the committee or agency? Seeing none. So let's split them. Let's go to item 13, which was mostly cleanup. Can I have a motion for item 13, please? 13-1.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chair, I would move approval submitted with item 13. No, I'm Bob Rammer.
Second by
Ron Takiguchi, second.
Okay, can we take the roll, please?
Osama Yunin,
Yes.
Dave Walls,
Yes.
Bob Raymer,
Yes.
Sharon Revum,
Yes.
Michael Stone,
Yes.
Wes Sullins,
Yes.
Carrie Ibala,
Yes.
Stephen Taylor,
Yes.
Ron Takaguchi,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. And if we could have a motion, please, for items 14-1 through 14-5, which deal only with tier 1 of item 14.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Bob Raymer. I would move approval as submitted for items 14-1 through 14-5.
Do I have a second?
Second, Ron Takiguchi.
Sharon, please go ahead.
Since I missed that one piece yesterday, where is the right place to say that I'd like to see the alternate compliance in the mandatory?
Okay, Emily, do you want to respond to that?
You mean as far as the location? I think the location would have been way back in, I think, item 5, where we were talking about the receptacles. If it would be relocated. But as I mentioned earlier, it would be a very difficult task. I know somebody commented that it would be the task for HCD and an administrative task, but I think Sven also talked about, working over the next month. And due to the deadlines on this code adoption cycle, we need to have our proposals completed by the 17th in order to, have them approved internally and then resubmitted to the Building Standards Commission. In addition, there's a significant amount of technical work that needs to be done as far as the cost impacts and the projections.
So like next Friday is, yeah, got it.
In addition, we can't do this by ourselves in a small group. We need to reopen it up to the stakeholders, which would include code enforcement. It would include building officials. It would include the building industry and also manufacturers, and of course the EV users and the multifamily dwelling residents.
Before the vote is taken, we're supposed to be asked to respond.
I'm sorry, who was this?
It's Linda. Before the vote is taken, because this is going to keep happening. Oh, it's too late. It's too late. May I please respond to Ms. Withers?
Well, the public comment.
Yes, Bob called on someone from the public, from Power Tree. If one of you might like to call on us, we greatly appreciate the chance to have somewhat of a dialogue. Thank you.
We're still, yeah, thank you very much.
Before the vote is taken.
We can't do that. We close the public comments, but we'll open it again for the second half of item 13. So you'll be able to comment then. But right now, we gotta follow the process, the rules of the committee. So Sharon, do you want to continue with your?
I guess that it's the complexity of doing this now, because it's already written into the alternates, and I guess I don't understand why the alternate, if it's in the alternates and explained already, why there's this giant lift. But I do want to point out to the people on the phone, getting this in at all in this code cycle, we do not want to push it out to the next code cycle. And if this is going to be a deal breaker, then I think we have to vote as is. And I'm sorry for that, because I think it's an important piece. But if it's between having them do a further study that takes them out to the next code cycle and approving it as it is, I'm going to say we need to prove it as is.
This is what I want to speak to. It is not clear.
I'm sorry, Linda, just give me 1 second. I need somebody. Yeah, I need somebody from the agency. I cannot break the rules of the committee. So somebody from BSC, if they could tell me we closed the public comments.
That's correct, Chairperson.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. We just gotta follow the rules of the committee. Okay. Linda, Sharon, I'm sorry. Do you have any more?
That's all I had.
All right, motion in a second.
And I thought I saw Ron's hand go up.
No, I withdraw my comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, so I don't see any more hands up from the committee members. With that, there is a first, there's a motion and a second, and now I'd like to take the roll.
Very well. Osama Yunin,
Yes.
Dave Walls,
Yes.
Bob Raymer,
Yes.
Sharon Revim,
Yes.
Michael Stone,
Yes.
Wes Sollins,
Yes.
Carrie Ibala,
Yes.
Stephen Taylor,
Yes.
Ron Takaguchi.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. So let's move on. We're still within the same item, 14. But now we'll move on to tier 2. And if HCD would like to go over tier 2, and then we'll open it to public comments.
Okay, this is Emily Withers with HCD. I am going to discuss our tier 2 proposal, which is on page 13 of the express terms. Starts out towards the top 1/3 of the page. And once again, it's a very similar format to tier 1, but I'll go ahead and explain it. We're stating that tier 2 consists of both option A and option B, and one or both may be adopted as voluntary measures. So for option A, this is a further enhancement of the tier 2 that was in the existing voluntary appendices. So what we're stating is that our recommended tier 2 is 55% of the total number of parking spaces for hotels and motels, and also multi-family parking facilities be equipped with EV charging receptacles. And that's an increase from 40% to 55%. For the chargers, which is item number, I forgot to mention the item number. That was 14.6, the EV receptacles. Item number 14.7 is the requirement for the EV chargers. Once again, we're in the voluntary for both the hotels and motels and multifamily parking facilities. We're proposing a 20% number of total parking spaces to have level 2 EV chargers. We have exceptions again. This is at the top of page 14. We have exceptions for areas served by parking lifts. And then we also have an exception where there's no common use parking spaces. Once again, we have the provision for use of automatic load management systems. This particular one is not restricted to those in excess of the required. It's open for all the receptacles and chargers. And then this is where we added option B. We had to play a little bit with the coalition's proposal to kind of bump it up to enhance it as a tier 2 measure. So what we're proposing, this is item 14.8 on page 14. What we're proposing is for EV ready parking spaces with receptacles, install one low power level 2 EV charging receptacle for each parking space available for use of residents. So that might turn out to be 2 spaces per unit. It maybe end up to be 3 spaces per unit. We really didn't specify that. Once again, the exception for areas served by parking lifts. And we put in, of course, the requirement for parking spaces with EV chargers at a 20% rate. And this would be applicable to parking areas for non-residents or guests. And then once again, the provision that at least 50% have the J1772 connectors. And also some exceptions, the lifts, areas of lifts, of course, and then where there are no common use parking areas. So that is our tier 2 proposal, similar to tier 1 at an enhanced level.
All right, thank you. Ron Takaguchi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for you, Emily, and just maybe editorial and that also applies to tier 1. So I apologize about my comment at this time, but it may be editorial. But just a clarification for option B, you use the title multifamily developments, where the word development was struck from the title in favor of multifamily dwellings. So I'm just wondering if that was intentional, or you do mean it to mean multifamily dwellings for consistency.
Thank you for your eagle eye on that. To those stakeholders who aren't involved in this code writing process, it's very easy to miss, typos like this, and really appreciated when it's brought to our attention. Really good in this part of the process versus after publication of 3,000 plus copies of the code. So thank you very much. We'll make that change.
No, and absolutely understood. And I think with that, Mr. Chair, that's a item that the agency could take care of on tier one. I believe, I correct, just an editorial change on option B, multifamily developments to multifamily dwellings. So it doesn't need to go back to committee, I don't believe. But another comment I had was raised yesterday, and it's regarding the exception to the parking lists. I believe on that subject that, I believe with item 5, the agency was going to take a look at parking lists and the various types, and also consider an exception for automated parking structures. And I apologize, but when the motion was made for tier 1 to accept as submitted, I would have made the clarification that the exception would be consistent with item number 5, where it had the same exception language. So, point of order, I'm not sure what could be done, seeing that we already voted on tier 1, but that might be editorial as well. For consistency with item 5.
I think it would be, since we've already suggested that. HCD, well, the agencies always do a great job of like coordinating internally. That last point you brought up, though, was a good one, though. Development should, yeah. So it seems editorial in nature.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And this is mainly just for the record, but both of these tiers and whatever configuration assigned, unassigned parking happens, it is what the requirement for the mandatory accessibility parking as per the previous item. And I think everyone will agree. I just want to state that for the record, because that's very important for electric vehicle charging and persons with disabilities. So that's my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitch Baker.
Yeah, just a quick response that HCD would commit to making those editorial comments, and we appreciate those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by committee members? Seeing none, let's open the public comments.
Dwight McCurdy.
Good morning again. I would like to speak a little broadly, since we all have talked in this fashion about the situation where the agencies are mutually culpable for the current situation. Bob's correct. The CPUC passes a regulation some years ago for resale of electricity at any price the market will bear at any location, including multifamily homes, but not single family homes, right? Then HCD adopts a code that says any ALMS company, whether masked as an EVSP or not, can resell electricity at an apartment complex at any price they wish as a monopolistic supplier. That's the problem, right? HCD was trying to allow for efficiency in supplying electricity, but instead HCD ended up inadvertently giving a monopolistic position to ALMS providers to sell electricity to residents of multifamily homes at any price. HCD could have gone back to the CPUC and said, hey, we want to encourage efficiency by the deployment of ALMS systems, but you, the CPUC, need to adopt a pricing policy that provides residents of multifamily homes with the same price protection and regulatory oversight so that they can pay the same price for charging at their multifamily home as inside their home. Someone dropped the ball here. Was it collusion by the agencies against those who live in single family homes and who want to charge their EV? Nope, it was an efficiency effort, right? But someone dropped the ball. Now the agencies collaboratively need to get together and solve this problem. If that means going to the governor, if that means going to the legislature, the agencies need to take this bull by the horns and help fix the problem.
Thank you.
You're
Next caller, please.
Sven Thiessen. Sven Thiessen.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty unmuting myself. I would like to reiterate that in 2015, every single family home was mandated to install EV capable charging infrastructure. It didn't matter what the cost or square foot of the building of the single family home was. That's when the inequity started. And you have time right now to at least recommend to HCD to include as an option in the mandatory requirements that would enable every single multifamily unit dwelling with access to parking to have access to EV charging. That would correct a now going on 8-year inequity in the codes. Further, it would actually save the builders money because when they build a complex with more than 180 parking spaces and 100 units, they actually have to spend a lot more money to comply with the current mandatory. Further, that code has been vetted and logically the same cost calculation that Emily's team had to do for the tier 1 should also comply to the mandatory. I don't understand why this is such a hard lift because it is an option and the language has been reviewed by all the stakeholders as part of this process. It escapes me that this board commission is unwilling to address the transportation security of our poorest residents by allowing them access to charging. We've heard about maintenance, we've heard about costs, and these all can be addressed simply by giving the residents access to charging. And we're running it as possible via the units meter. This is affecting every year. Thank you. This is affecting every year 25,000 families in California. You are denying them the right to do this. And the numbers are close to 500,000 people since 2015. 500,000 families have not been allowed to have transportation security provided by electric vehicles because of this inequity. And inequity is
Then I
different.
need you to wrap up. Your time is up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, next caller, please.
Linda Hutchins Knowles.
Yes, I have 7 points. I'll make them quick. Number 1, point of order. It seemed that Mr. Bob Raymer called on a gentleman from Power Tree after public comments were closed, and I was not afforded the same opportunity. I believe that you have the right to call on the public if you'd like to get our input, so please take advantage of that. Number 2,
Linda, I'm not going to take away from your time. We'll start your 2 minutes, but I want to answer that. If a committee member is wanting information from the public, that's fine. But in that previous case, there wasn't a hand up to call for anybody. So that was the difference.
That's
But,
correct.
let's start the 2 minutes from.
Can I just respond and then start the 2 minutes? I was just offering to them to be a member where you can do that, and we'd love to have that chance. Okay, now we can start my time.
You could start your time, yes.
Okay, I want to clarify that our proposal, we didn't ask you to put this in the mandatory section because we do understand the time constraints. We wish you would have, you could have. But what you can do is simply duplicate the exact language from optional tier 1 option B. It's already been vetted. Who would be hurt by doing this? Builders will not be hurt. The only hang up I've heard is that the staff doesn't have enough time to scramble to do this. Well, that timeline was set by the agency. Okay, so this has got to stop. Else all you can do is make toothless changes. That's no more than just proofreading. Okay, but we tried to make it easy. It shouldn't be hard to duplicate the language. There's no more cost analysis, no more stakeholders. It's all been vetted. You might think it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. I work to get reach codes passed in cities. It takes enormous effort. We don't want to have cities have to do that. Builders are more likely to do it if it's in the mandatory. Increase the chances they will take it. Please, this may not be your jurisdiction. This is the next point about CPUC comments. But what you have jurisdiction over is whether people can have vehicle to home benefits. Vehicle to home. So when a power outage goes out and someone is on a ventilator, they can power that ventilator from their car. The CPUC won't be able to change that with rates. This is about access to the benefits of electric vehicles, including vehicle to grid, vehicle to home. We need an all of government approach. We did legislation. We passed by a supermajority, and it unfortunately was vetoed. We don't want to waste our time going through that process again. You can do this now. And I will finish by saying the process, please make process recommendations, not just code. If it's only one day around, you can make that a bigger turnaround next time. Either start this earlier, move that later, but let this be real meaningful input and not be told we don't have time to make a substantive change. This is not even a substantive change. Please do your job.
Thank you, Linda. Next caller, please.
Michelle Pierce.
I said it yesterday and I'm saying it again today because it is so frustrating. Oh,
We can hear you. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I said it yesterday and I'm saying it again today because it is so frustrating to watch the misdirection and doublespeak that the committee displays. It is so painful. Changing the code and making 100% access to EV charging mandatory is the only way that new apartment buildings will build above code requirements. By focusing on the cost of public charging and saying that HCD doesn't control the cost is glaringly rude on your part. We bring up the cost of public charging and what EVSP's costs are to show the importance of charging at home. 100% access to charging at home is the only equitable, affordable, and convenient solution. The Charging for All Coalition did go through the legislative process, and the building industry lobbyists effectively neutered SB 1482, and the governor vetoed it. The cruel irony of the suggestions earlier is only meant to twist the knife in our backs. Sharing on-site chargers is not a viable solution to charging at home. Right now, where I live at the apartment complex, the dog park is closed because senior citizens can't get along and started a fight. Those of us without the ability to charge at home know the rude drivers will plug in and leave their vehicles unattended for long after the charging session is over. As an older woman of color, listening to this procedure brings me back to all the times I was told that I need to wait to get the same rights and privileges in all areas of my life. Just so you know, your behavior and methods of communication to us has the same effects as Jim Crow laws.
10 seconds. Oh, she's done.
Michelle, you're done?
She muted herself, sir.
She muted herself. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Next caller, please.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, committee discussion. Seeing none. Let's move on to nobody on the phone either.
No, no. That phone number is no longer in the queue.
Okay, how about written comments?
Those have been summarized already, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, do you want a motion or do you want to go on to items 15 and 16? Do you want to finish up 14?
What's the pleasure of the committee?
14.
Okay, Mr. Chair, this is Bob Raymer, and I would like to make a motion to approve as submitted items 14, 6, 7, and 8.
Do I have a second?
Second, Ron Takiguchi.
Sharon's got a comment.
Okay, I have a motion and a second and a hand. Sharon, please go ahead.
Let's make sure we get the comment that Ron made earlier about the lifts in this one, so we didn't get it in the first one.
And looking at HCD, I'm assuming that the editorial changes we've been discussing, as you indicated, Mitchell, will be taken care of.
Yep. Thank you, Sharon.
This is Steve Taylor. 6, 7, and 8. I thought we were talking about 14.
Yes, it's 14, items 6, 7, and 8.
Oh,
14-6, 14-7,
got it.
14-8. Thank you.
Got it.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Let's take the roll.
Osama Yunin,
Yes.
Dave Walls,
Yes.
Bob Reamer,
Yes.
Sharon Revum,
Yes.
Michael Stone,
Yes.
Wes Sullins,
Yes.
Carrie Ibala,
Yes.
Stephen Taylor,
Yes.
Ron Takaguchi.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. And this is a question to Emily. Would it make sense to take items 15 and 16 together?
I think we can because they're mostly editorial, though they're not really related. So I'll go ahead and describe. I'm on page 15 of the express terms. It's item 15-1. It's section A4.106.8.2.2 technical requirements. And this is an existing section, and we're just correcting references to repealed and renumbered sections.
So it's renumbering, basically.
Basically, yeah, and getting rid of the repealed references. Item 16.1, once again on page 15. This is Appendix A4 Residential Voluntary Measures, Section A4602. This is the residential occupancies application checklist. It's actually a fairly detailed checklist going through the various divisions of CalGreen for HCV, but we're only proposing changes to update with, code text that's been changed in the previous pages. So we're changing 4.106.42 to show the appropriate sections and remove the deleted sections. We're making a correction in section 4.504.4, dealing with composite wood, and then making sure that we clarify that it also applies to exterior finish systems. And this is already in the main text of the code. So we're just updating this checklist. And then for installer and special inspections, section 702.2, we're correcting that the special inspectors will be employed by the owner or owner's agent instead of the enforcing agency. So once again, that text is actually reflected in chapter 7. And then we're also making the corrections to the voluntary tiers, tier 1 and tier 2.
All right. Okay. Just to make them match what we already, what to reflect the changes so they match.
Right.
Basically, that's what you're doing. Okay, I have a hand up, Ron Takaguchi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily, just a clarification, please, and I apologize to the committee and everyone. I'm a little bit confused on the pollutant control items. Since there's a change, should that have been in the as an item to discuss? Because we didn't discuss materials in this committee meeting.
That should be reflected in the existing language of 4.504.5, which I can kind of pull up.
Was that an item in one of the item numbers?
No, what the actual code text says in the CalGreen code, this is on page 4-13. It's item 4-504.5. And what it states is hardwood, plywood, particle board, and medium density fiberboard composite wood products used on the interior or exterior of the building shall meet the requirements for formaldehyde, etc. So in the application checklist, we just put in the exterior reference.
No, I get that, but I'm saying that change is proposed. And, oh, I see. You're just catching up what was in the 2022 code, already published.
Yeah, it's been
Okay,
there for a
okay.
while. Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry I didn't get that. Okay, thank you, Emily, and that's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, any more committee discussion? I don't see any hands up. Okay, with that, may I have a motion, please?
Point of order, we just need to go to public comment first, Chairperson.
I am so sorry. I got mixed up with the last. Yes, please forgive me.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we go to public comments, please?
Sven Thiessen.
Hi, Sven Thiessen. In my prior life as a chemical engineer, did a huge amount of air pollution control and cost analysis based on various technologies. So I'd like to ask HCD and to compare the cost of this formaldehyde reduction regulation, which I am in all support of, compared to the emission reductions associated with the adoption of electric vehicles by roughly 25,000 families per year that are not going to be able to adopt EVs because they don't have at-home charging. This shouldn't be that hard to calculate because by HCD, you've done both comparisons. So what is the cost effectiveness between these two regulations? I would posit that getting charging for those 25,000 people and for the 500,000 families that have been missed since 2015 have a much greater emission reduction portfolio. CARB should weigh in as well. I mean, because they do these calculations. And again, I'm happy to support as a chemical engineer, having run these numbers before and worked at fiberboard plants. I'm happy to do it pro bono. We are here we are throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You are focused on mechanical parking systems to the detriment of 25,000 families per year that are not going to be able to get charging. And I feel particularly angry and sad, and I will forgive you because you are individually good people. Cumulatively, you're maybe controlled by the system. So I will forgive you individually, but think about what you're doing because you individually, you don't have this problem. You don't have the problem that Michelle stated. You don't have the problem that Dr. Emily Withers stated. You guys in single family homes are the privileged ones that can easily go call an electrician to come out. That is nigh impossible in a condo and apartment. And you've heard that from your own counsel. Please.
Thank you. Next call. Well, no, before we go to the next caller, I see Joshua Cunningham.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for giving me a chance to weigh in. I've been able to participate in a number of the parts of the conversations the past couple of days. Like I said before on the Building Standards Commission, I really want to emphasize the partnership that we've had with the California Air Resources Board with your Housing Community Development team, HCD, and the proposal over several months, many months of our regulatory work to support these proposals. In our perspective, the proposals you're looking at now for the mandatory measures previously voted on and these current voluntary measures in items 15 and 16 are important steps forward for the building code. And we do believe that moving up to 50% of parking spaces being electrified where you have 40% of EV ready and 10% EVSE is a really important step forward relative to what the current codes have. And given that there are multiple parking spaces per many housing units, we think it provides a really valuable enhancement to where there's going to be access for residents from the housing units. So generally, I want to just voice support for where the staff's proposal are in front of you and be happy to answer further questions.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more hands from committee or state.
I'm
Can
sorry. my
we go
hand
back to public comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Was there something from the agency?
You are going back to public comments. Okay, my hand is raised. I'll just wait.
Okay. And Joshua, your hand's still up? Are you? Oh, you're not. Okay. Can we go back to public comments, please?
Linda Hutchins Knowles.
Hi, thank you. I just want to correct one thing Sven said. I do know that some of you live in multifamily housing. I've been here for most of the past 3 days, and some of you do, and we appreciate that. And you've weighed in at important times. And second, no one, Mr. Cunningham, disputes that it's an improvement. In fact, this is probably nation leading. That is great, but it is just simply not good enough. We can't afford to go at this incremental rate. Eisenstein said it. Do you remember his quote? He said, everything has changed, save our modes of thinking, and thus we drift toward unparalleled catastrophe. We are witnessing a slow motion but accelerating climate crisis. You are crashing into the iceberg. Every agency has a role. And CARB, I would ask you to step it up. If you think this is sufficient, we will not meet your own targets, which are so ambitious and wonderful. This is not adequate. I have 2 process suggestions that I would like this committee. I would ask you to make a motion, somebody here, that you are recommending 2 process changes to HCD or BCS, whichever one does it, that in the next triennial cycle, to seriously consider requiring 100% access to low power level 2 charging for at least every unit in a new multifamily housing. We've seen the projected timeline, and this is not expected by the agency to reach that until 2030. That's what we've been shown. How could you continue to delay this? Building new retrofits. It's absolutely illogical. So please make that recommendation. Whether you have the power to change things now, you could make that recommendation to them. Second, make a recommendation that the timeline be changed, having 1 week between this code advisory committee meeting and when Ms. Withers says they need to finalize, I'm going to please finish, between when you need to finalize is simply not sufficient. This happened last year when you said, you gave us so much to consider, we didn't have time. Make the time. Please make the time. And finally, the representation needs to be made official. Please make a motion that you ask the code advisory committee seats to include at least 1 multifamily resident in that official capacity from a low-income community, so this voice will be heard and they have voting privileges. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing a motion from you brave souls who understand this and don't want to be caught up in this regulatory inertia. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next caller, please.
There are no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, do we have anybody on the phone or any written comments?
No phone callers.
And the written comments have been summarized.
Okay, I see one more. Okay, no, that's a committee. So no calls, no hands up from the public. Okay.
That is correct.
So we'll go ahead and close the public comment. So now we go to committee. Stephen Taylor, please.
I do agree that the fact that we can't make any substantive changes because of this issue of schedule, it does seem like this group is just sort of a rubber stamp. What is the, I don't know all the timing of things, and those who have been on these committees longer, maybe can explain why this doesn't all happen sooner, where this group can have a substantive impact on making changes.
Yeah, Mia's got her hand raised.
Mia, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I was actually going to talk about it at the end of the meeting. I can either do that now or I can wait till the end of the meeting. It's up to you, Chair.
Yeah, so like I mentioned yesterday, at the end of the meeting, I was gonna ask Mia to talk about what's our authority here and not, and what's the process, what's the next step, what do people get to do after. If you like, Mr. Taylor, we can have her to do it now, or we can wait till then.
I'm happy to wait.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry, Bob.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is Bob Raymer. Before I make the global motions, we need to finish up with the appendix. So I would make a motion to approve as submitted items number 15 and 16 in HCD's package.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Dave Walls, and I do have a hand up from Ellen Owens and followed by Carrie Ibala. Good morning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is a little bit of a follow-up on Steve's question. If we have the summary from Mia at the end of the meeting, will that preclude any motions being made, or can the committee still take action at the end of the meeting, even though there isn't a specific item still under consideration?
We'll do it before we get the global approval, which approves everything we did. We'll do it before then.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
That covers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, no more hands. So before we have a global motion,
Mr. Walls has his hand up.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Walls.
Oh, Dave. I'm sorry, Dave. I didn't see it.
That's all right. But I was just going to say that yeah, our role, and Mia will explain that, is to take action on what's proposed before us. So things like, the adding anything to the code advisory committee or any group like that, that's strictly, I don't believe that's our role to do. They've heard it. They know the recommendation from the public, and I think they will consider it.
Right. Okay. If I understood the
motion,
was it Ellen? She wanted us to talk about the process. Before
do we still need to vote on the rest of item? Let's see, we got item
15 and 16.
No, we're done. We're done with the items. We did 16, 15, and 16 already.
We had a motion, but I think.
Didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so let's vote on 15 and 16 and then continue this discussion. No hands up from committee. So let's go ahead and take the roll. We have a first and a second on 15 and 16.
Okay, very well. Osama Yunin,
Yes.
Dave Walls,
Yes.
Bob Raymer,
yes,
Sharon Revum,
Yes.
Michael Stone,
Yes.
Wes Sullins,
Yes.
Carrie Ibala,
Yes.
Stephen Taylor,
Yes.
Ron Takaguchi,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. So I was gonna ask Director Mervelli if she could explain what we are doing here and what's our authority, jurisdiction, and what's the next step. And would you mind doing that, Director Mervelli?
Oh, happy to. Yeah, right. Well, Dave mentioned this, but I think it's important. We'll start with the role of the committee. And so the purpose of this committee is, and this is in regulations in part 1, is there are designated memberships for the committee, and that's based on the subject matter expertise of the rulemakings that the committees would hear. So for example, this committee has environmental folks, it has the building officials, it has the mechanical engineers, sustainability folks, so on, fire official. Additionally, it has a public member and it has the ex officio members. So the public member could be anyone from the community interested in this topic. And that was actually one of the next things I was going to discuss, is the fact that every 3 years, the commission reconstitutes these committees. And it's an application process. It goes through a vetting process, and then the members are selected. And they serve for 3 years. They hear the triennial code adoption rulemakings, and then they hear the intervening, which is where we are today. And then the service ends for those members. And then we'll be reconstituting it. So we look at the building standards. We'll probably issue a call for application, is what they call it. It's sent to all of our interested parties, soliciting folks who want to be on a committee. So I kind of want to make it clear that the roles are designated in the regulations, and so is the process, and the availability for a public member with any expertise in this area is welcome to apply. So I hope that covers the committee. The other part of the committee is you're absolutely right, is the we're at, like, I'll call it phase 2 of the rulemaking process. Phase 1 was a very lengthy public process where we conducted workshops. And I say we, and I want to be clear here, is each state agency has a responsibility to vet with the public their proposed code language and get feedback when it is complex or large in number. That's also in the regulations. This is a requirement of the Administrative Procedure Act. We follow that. The next step is they massage that language based on the policy that they're given, based on the direction that they're given, the recommendations by the interested parties, and they conduct the cost benefit analysis as well. And their agency has to approve that and go through a process before it's submitted to the Building Standards Commission. So once it comes to the commission, that's where we kick in and start to conduct these public meetings. We have the Code Advisory Committee, and their authority is limited to what is proposed in the regulations. And we've talked about the 4 actions that they can take: approve, disapprove, further study, approve as amend, based on the 9-point criteria. I think it's important to remember that I want to back up on the workshops a little bit, it's up to the state agency to conduct that process. In many instances for the green code proposals, we had joint workshops. The reason being is we had overlapping interested parties and thought it would be easier to hear from those all at once. The individual state agencies can continue to have those workshops if they so choose to further vet their regulations. It's completely up to them. So I want to clarify that. The next step in the process is the state agencies will massage their code language based on the recommendations provided by the Code Advisory Committee. They will resubmit to the Building Standards Commission, at which time we will start a 45-day comment period. Those dates have not been posted to our website, but I can tell you that the due date for the rulemaking packages to come back to BSC is March 13th. For these regulations, and the 45-day comment period will be March 31st through May 15th. Again, this is all part of the Administrative Procedure Act requirements that we follow. Once the 45-day comment period concludes, the state agencies have an opportunity to massage the language if it's sufficiently related. We can have a follow-up comment period if necessary. And then the final rulemakings will be heard by the commission later this summer. So that's the process. And I wonder if the committee has any questions.
Mia, I do. Just to be very clear, does this committee have any jurisdiction whatsoever to change any of the process?
No, actually, no. But because part of it is it's in law. So we're following the law. I think, when we talk about the timing of things, and I can appreciate the timing part, is we could absolutely put more time in, but the problem is this committee, the 9-point criteria is really based on the regulations that are proposed. So a substantive change is a little bit subjective. I want to be careful not to step on anyone's toes, but it's a little bit subjective because the Building Standards Commission's team is not in the throes of what the state agencies are proposing and what their goal is for their agency. That's the state agency's responsibility. And so they've conducted cost benefit analysis and they've done their research and are merely presenting it to this committee for recommended action. So timing wise, we can make adjustments in the schedule, but I think we would be looking at a bit of a sea change in our office on how that would happen. The outcome might not be any different, right? The process is going to be the same. It's just if there's more time allotted, it will impact possibly how many rulemakings we're able to do in a cycle or how long that takes. We currently are authorized to have a triennial, which is where we adopt the model code. And we have to do that within 1 year of the publication of the model code. That's in law. We also have the option to have an intervening code cycle, which is where we're at right now. And that's exactly 18 months after the triennial. So you can see that what sounds like a lot of time, in 18 months, there's not a lot of time to have pre-cycle approval from the agencies, submittal to the building standards, conduct code advisory committee, 45-day, and then a commission hearing. So the time is compressed. And it's been that way for at least 15 years. There was a time when there was an annual rulemaking cycle, and that wasn't, we found that was changed in law. So any more questions? Did I answer your question, Osama? I'm
You
sorry.
did. Thank you very much. Yes. We have a hand, Bob Raymer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And that was a very good presentation, Director Marbelli. Sort of an addition here that might not be given a lot of consideration is the fact that the Green Building Code is Part 11 of Title 24. And these same people that have been testifying on behalf of the state agencies for the last few days also have to do the building code, the residential code, the electrical code, mechanical, plumbing, fire, etc. And so it's an enormous workload. And I've noticed over the last 12 years, green building has kind of moved to the head of the pack. Rightfully so, I suppose. But the fact here is, this isn't the only thing the agencies do, which is why, I'm interested in all the codes, quite frankly. I know the building officials certainly are. And so I just wanted to add that they do have a hell of a burden to deal with. And thank you, Mia.
Wes, you have a question for Director Marbelli?
Yeah, and I do want to just thank all the staff. I know it is a lot of work they have to do in 18 months, and it just continues. So it's impressive what you can get done. I think one of the things that I was involved with, and I know a lot of the public commenters, it sounds like, we're also involved with, was a couple of initiatives this code cycle to try to get at some of those things, Bob, you're saying are sort of rising to the top, things like carbon reduction and increased EV use in building codes in Calgary. And so the agencies did have the carbon reduction collaboration group, PCRC. And I just think it felt short, but it was nice. And it was an improvement on the past when even there wasn't as much involvement pre-cycle, I would say, on some of these bigger changes. And I guess, so it's been nice to have that process. I think it did benefit and brought some new ideas to this code cycle, particularly for DSA and BSC, the ones I was involved in at least. I would just encourage for this next full code cycle that we really try to expand the timeline there to get even more input. And I know that's a lot and it's asking a lot, but basically proposals for this next full code cycle are going to need to be formulated by summer, as soon as this intervening cycle is over. And so it's a lot of things to go quickly. So I would just encourage the agencies to please do make every effort to spend as much time as we can on those, because I think this next code cycle, the 2026, whatever that'll be, you're probably going to get a lot more interest in, again, this chapter section 11. And rather than, having to delay things and keep going, like, let's make it appropriate. Let's staff it appropriately. Let's get the right feedback so that this can be a big update. I feel like there's quite a lot of advocates that want to see big changes to Calgary, and especially the tiers. And it would be nice if we have the headspace to be able to think of those, not just kind of incremental changes, but maybe a big change or some big changes. So I just wanted to mention that. I think it's been a good process, but I'd like to see even more. Thanks.
Thank you. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more just of a general comment. and maybe looking a bit back, because I was on the inaugural Code Advisory Committee for the Cal Green Code. That's when Dave Walls and his staff brought it forward to the state of California. And as a state, individual state, we are very lucky that we do have our own green construction code, and we could drive it in the manner that we do. The process is very quick, and where the appreciation comes in is from the experts, from those who are at the ground level, the experts that we heard from today, members of the public, and that will drive any change, any future proposals. Because if you look at the original Cal Green Code versus today, what it includes, it is including a lot of the technological advances, and certainly the environmental concerns that we have. And we're very lucky that we have our own code to input these things. Revolutionary, for example, was one other thing that was considered, and that's the bird-friendly environmental construction that was heard by this body this week. Never did I think that we would even have the ability, but thank goodness we have the Green Code to do so. So I do want to thank staff, both the Building Standards Commission and state agencies. They have a tough job in bringing this forward in a very short time, following the great input from the workshops, and then the manner in which they put a package together for this committee. So that's my appreciation to everyone, members of the public included. And that's my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon?
I want to reiterate what Ron said and thank staff and the public for their input on this. We all take this very seriously and we do the best we can. We are sympathetic. I'll speak for myself. I'm very sympathetic with a lot of the things that were brought by the public today, and I feel strongly that they're very important points. But we do have a lack of authority in certain areas, and we have to work within what the law allows us to do. And part of what we recommend today, if we ask for further study, that's potentially pushing off some of these things to a future code cycle. So there's kind of a fine line to walk there between the perfect and the good. And so I hope that the people on the call understand that. Having been involved with it myself, it's a tough haul, but the local reach codes that happen in individual communities are important steps forward. It helps illustrate the fact that some of these things that we want to see in actual code can happen, and they can function, and it helps inform the whole process that if this community can do it, then another can, and perhaps it really does belong in the code itself. So I just wanted to say that and appreciate everybody's efforts, both staff and public, on this.
Thank you. Stephen Taylor.
So it sounds like from the description that of the procedures is that basically the workshop is the time for people to make substantive comments and get things done. At this point, it's basically too late. But I think that there are a lot of good there's good input from this panel as well as the public. So moving this up a little bit so that we can not feel like we're, as Sharon said, going to cause something to not get into the committee. I mean, if we find something that language that really needs to be fixed, like I think the issue of who's responsible for proving feasibility that was brought up yesterday, I wish there were time that could get through. I wish we had a little bit more time so that this group could make more substantive changes. But now that I understand the procedure, we'll get involved earlier. Thanks.
Thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to reiterate the same comments from Stephen and from Sharon. I think that we all here would like to see, more positive change, and that would be a great thing to see. And I hope that in the next cycle, that it is sincerely looked at during the workshops at, some of the proposals that are talked about by the public comment. And in those workshops is definitely the time to do that. I know I've been on workshops primarily for SFM, and those they have the time available there, even though it is not as long as it everyone hopes, but there is more time to have those conversations and look at those different options. And the limited scope of what we're able to do here as the Code Advisory Committee, at looking at those 9 criteria, I can only speak for myself, but I'm not going to vote no on something that is a positive change, because I think it's not far enough. If that conversation of what is enough is definitely a conversation that belongs in the workshop, rather than writing code on the fly here in a Code Advisory Committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I just want to thank me again for doing a great job kind of explaining that, but the process. But just to Stephen's point, I would say it's still never too late to make a comment about substantive issues if you really feel it's important. Doesn't mean the agency has the time to do it. And I don't know if Mia mentioned it, but the APA also limits, once you start the rulemaking process, you have, I think, 1 year unless they've changed it. Maybe Kevin or Mia can clarify that, or the rulemaking dies. So I mean, there's a limitation there as well in law, as well. But I want to take a moment right now to thank the chair and thank for doing a great job these last few days, as well as the public. I think there's been a tremendous amount of public input and participation, which is great, because as Ron mentioned, I've kind of done this before, and so there are times that you don't even get the public involved, or I should say the public doesn't get involved. We always offer that opportunity, and workshops are the #1 place that occur for months before we get to this step, and that's when a lot of these things hopefully get worked out. Now, it doesn't mean that what you say or what you want is going to get into the code, because there's different voices from different perspectives and different positions. But the state agencies, in my opinion, and again, I've sat in their seat, so I know what they go through, and I know they work very hard, and they try to do the best they can, and they're proposing based on all the evidence that they have, as well as all the public comments. Everything you say, even during these last few days, they hear it and they take it into consideration. Doesn't mean they can or can't do anything about it, but they will take it into consideration along with our comments as well. So, everybody, I would appreciate the committee as well. This has been a really a couple of days. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Wes?
Yeah, agreed. Just wanted to, I think it may have been said, but this is not the end of the road either for these code proposals. I think by my notes in April or May that these, will get packaged up and go out to the official public comment process, the full 45-day, and then perhaps more. So, for those public members, this is not the last time. I think there is an opportunity to speak up more and have your voice heard in the next round as well. Just wanted to share.
Thank you. Enrique?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, before we close, I just wanted to acknowledge California Air Resources Board for helping the Building Standards Commission with a lot of the cost benefit analysis, Joshua Cunningham and his team and his staff, Adrian Harris and Andrew Martinez. And then for the medium heavy duty card proposal, I'd like to thank Bruce Tedder and Steven Toft. And then of course, DSA staff, and of course HCD with all that great coordination that we had to put together this package in front of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dave, you have your hand up. Is that just from?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Wes said, that the participation also includes the Building Standards Commission meeting, where you can go and speak to the commissioners directly, and they're the ones that make the final vote. And the reason the 9-point criteria is there is because they have to follow that ultimately themselves, and so that's why we are limited to that same criteria.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mia, thank you so much for explaining the process. That's really helpful. With that, we still need a global motion.
May
Yes,
we
Mr.
please have public comment before the global motion? Thank you.
As a point of order, can we do that?
Well, that's up to the chair, but we're not,
On the agenda.
we're just kind of done with the meeting. There isn't any rulemaking that we're taking comment on. So that's it's not necessary, and there's no action required. So it's up to the group if you want to hear public comment.
What I'm concerned with is if I open it to one, we're gonna have to open it to everybody, and I mean,
There's
the
hardly anybody here left. May I please have a chance to make a final comment?
Okay, can you do it like really quick?
I will. First, I want to start with appreciation. I do appreciate everybody here and how hard you're working and how hard this is. This is a huge challenge. And everybody here, I believe, is acting in good faith, and I appreciate everyone's efforts. I do want to say that we have spoken up in virtually every public workshop, and there's a problem with that process. And I would like to go on record asking HCD to please meet with our coalition so we can share with you our ideas for how to make that process much more effective and efficient. It was very frustrating, and it was very different from DSA's process. So please reach out to us, because we're being told that was the time to speak up. Believe me, we spoke up. And then to say that, oh, but you'll have a chance in the 45-day comment period. What happened last time was, oh, but it's too late because the changes should have been made back in the Code Advisory Committee meeting. So we hope, if it's sincere, if it's really truly that you are going to take public comment and consider it in the 45-day period, then please do. We tried to make this easy. We tried to make it fit in with an alternative compliance pathway that duplicates the exact language that has already been approved. So please consider that. And finally, to the point about the Building Standards Commission as your ultimate backstop, that failed. That failed for us because, again, they said, oh, it's too late. If we don't approve it, then we risk throwing the whole thing out. Just what your point was, Ms. Ruffram. They'll say that again. And so I submit this process is deeply flawed. Probably not by intention, but it is. And we have ideas how to fix it. So let's not just feel constrained by the process, but be creative, be innovative, be participatory, and listen to us, because we think there's some really great facilitation techniques you could use to have a more productive conversation in the workshops. Okay, and finally, again,
Need you to wrap up, Linda.
Yeah, the last thing is, please remember, we have to do things differently than we have done in the past, else we will drift into unparalleled destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. And since Linda had a chance to speak,
earlier is that we have
Michelle needs to be offered the same opportunity. Go ahead,
Thank
Michelle. Please be brief, though.
About a year ago, members of our coalition continuously asked for direct access to the workshops. We were told it is online. I never did find it during my search. I work part-time as an electrical project manager for a small MEP firm, and one of the senior members of the firm shared the workshop details. I joined a couple of the workshops, and there was no entryway to voice my opinions. It is a very technical committee. One thing to remember is that Jim Crow was the law.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, with that, may I have a motion?
Yes, Mr.
Chairperson, there's
Yeah.
one,
Oh,
there is another hand raised in the
sorry.
public.
Okay, can we make that our last call, please, so we could get the motion? Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr.
Hi,
Thiessen.
Sven Thiessen. I don't see why you guys can't make a friendly recommendation to HCD to allow in the next code cycle, the next triennial code cycle, it's a mandate that every unit that has access to parking has access to charging. It's a recommendation, it's a suggestion, but it's a point of order. It's a stand that you guys are taking, having heard all of the people that actually live in these multifamily houses. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and have a global motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Bob Raymer, and I would like to make a motion for the committee to approve all of our actions that we've taken on HCD's regulatory package.
Can I have a second, please? Dave Walls was second, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ron, go ahead.
Oh, no comment. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, so we have a first and a second. Can we take the roll, please?
Yes. Osama Yunin,
Yes.
Dave Walls,
Yes.
Bob Raymer,
Yes.
Sharon Revum,
Yes.
Michael Stone,
Yes.
Wes Sullins,
Yes.
Carrie Ibala,
Yes.
Stephen Taylor,
Yes.
Ron Takaguchi.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. With that, I want to extend my thanks to
Mr.
HCD.
Chair, or sorry, and Mia, do we need one global acceptance of all state agencies?
Oh,
No,
Did we
I
still
I
do
think
that?
we did each one, so I think we're okay.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Emily.
Emily, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'd like to make a statement to this committee. In conclusion, I'd like to thank all of the CAC members for your patience and your support and your sharing of expertise. The Green CAC experience over the years since I've been with HCD since 2008 has been fun and enlightening. It's raised our standards, our awareness, and my blood pressure, but in a good way. Thank you for all of those who have interacted and assisted HCD and me over the years to help develop CalGreen, Dana, Bob Raymer, Dave Walls, Osama, Wes Sullins. I can't mention all, Ron Takaguchi, that I've worked with. I really appreciate your feedback. And March 17th will be my last day at HCD. So I don't want to be 70 years old when I leave HCD. So that's my goal here. But I will be here before we submit this package for the 45-day comment period. So I think you'll be happy with my successors. Hopefully you haven't scared them off with the Access CAC and this CAC. We have some new people working at HCD and they're kind of scared, of these CAC meetings, and understandably so. And to the stakeholders, I really commend your passion. Work with us, help us. Look at these options that we have put in, see how they're working, look at the comments that we get. I'm sure we have some comments on how the options will work, but we're not going to address those questions quite yet. But, keep track of the questions and make it a really good, workable, feasible, enforceable package. So anyways, with that, thank you everybody for all your comments. And, I'll be in the other two CACs, but as I mentioned, I'll work on the CalGreen before I leave for greener pastures. So thank you very much.
all right, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We'll miss
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Well, we will miss you.
congratulations.
We will miss you. You've been the face of HCD for us, so. But congratulations, well deserved, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Be gentle with my successors.
All right. With that, I think HCD is done with their package. On behalf of the committee, would like to thank you for your presentation and your insights, and you and Mitch and your team, as well as ERB, of course. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, this concludes this CAC meeting. Any last comments from the committee members before we adjourn?
Just for me, and I kind of did the whole spiel about, we highly encourage you to apply next year to be on a 3-year stint again. Your contribution and technical expertise is extremely valued in this very important step in building standards. And Osama, I really appreciate your leadership through the last 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any last comments from the committee members? Okay, hearing none, I want to close by thanking the state agencies, all of them. It's very tough. Regulations touch many people, the end user, it's a whole spectrum of people and interests that it touches, and to get a balance among everybody and to make something that's actually enforceable. So the other part of this, which is the enforcement through the building departments, so they can do their job. That's really a very hard job. And I've been doing this for a long time, and you always manage to find a way to make it work. And it's really very admirable. So thank you to all the state agencies very much. We appreciate it. And nothing gets done in the best way without the public comments. These public comments that come through are extremely important and vital to having better product. You know, one hand doesn't clap, and this process depends on everybody involved. And I really admire and appreciate all the passion, all the great thoughts by the members of the public. And it takes a village, as they say, to make things happen. And everybody is important, equally important in this. So with that, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a safe weekend, and I hope your team wins. All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.